Hey, welcome to the Intellittech AI Practical Use Case webinar. My name is Grant Erickson. I'm the CEO here at Intellittech, and I wanted just to give a little bit of a why are we even doing this? And the reason is that we're talking to organizations all over the place around the nation about AI, and one of the things that we're finding is that there's a lot of people out there offering assessments. Hey, let us assess your, and the answer is, well, you probably have some things that are in decent shape and maybe not, but there's probably some other places that can use some work. The thing is that we're finding that the biggest gap is actually in ideas, is in finding things that people can actually do that are helpful to move their businesses forward. Like, how do we take this new tool that we've never had before, that people really don't understand at a deep level, and really take that tool and use it effectively for business value within our company? So that's really why we're doing this. We're going to have 3 or 4 great people to talk to you today to kind of walk you through a few of the ways that we're using it here and the ways that we've seen other folks use it as well. So a couple of things, just for kind of housekeeping. We have a live chat here on YouTube. Go ahead, put your comments in there. We will read those after each one, as well as I hear I'm supposed to be advancing slides, which will mean for me, see if I can do that for you. Okay, here we go. Yeah, a little bit about Intellittech. We'll be doing some slides, as well as for some questions, as well as also get your phones out at the end. We'd love to get some feedback to help shape the new ones of these. So just a little bit about Intellittech. We do all kinds of different kinds of software development, cloud implementations, helping you move from an on-prem implementation to the cloud, old software to new. And quite honestly, in these days, we're talking about things like, hey, we're using this old system that we bought that we hate. Is there something that we could maybe tailor that would really work for our business well? So we do a lot of different things with respect to software development, cloud and DevOps, data AI, system integrations, hooking existing systems together. And what I'd like to do, well, we kind of already talked to the agenda. I should probably go through these and actually follow the agenda, but this is what we're getting today. And we're going to talk about all these different pieces. And the first thing we're talking about is AI in your job. And I'd like to introduce Dan Olvera, and he is one of our developers here, and he is really out on the front lines doing a lot of the things that are really leading the way with respect to how we can use AI inside of just the day-to-day kind of job operations. Dan, here you go.
Thank you, Grant. And we're going to start pretty small, because when you hear the word AI, you suddenly think, oh, I can do everything and anything I want. I can totally transform my business. I'm going to be a great influencer on LinkedIn, all the things. So we're going to be talking about how to personally use AI in your everyday work. So how do you get started first? We are going to be starting with not replacing everything like we talked about. We're not going to be just using it like a search engine, but we are going to be talking about how you can become a prompt engineer like all those people on LinkedIn think they are. So starting personal, where do you get started? What do you love most about your job? These are the kind of questions that you're going to be asking yourself as you learn about AI, because AI is just a tool to extract processes and to learn how to better use all the things at your disposal. A more important question, what do you hate most about your job? This is where you should be looking to automate away your annoyances. So when you are thinking about the things you don't like in your job, you might have a ton of them, but start with one process. Defining processes can take a lot of time, so start with just one and just start building. In a class, a professor was grading, it was a pottery class, and he was saying throughout the semester, one class is going to only be graded on a single pot. Make the best possible pot you can. He had another class that said, just build as many as you can, doesn't matter, just I'm going to be grading how many pots you have. And at the end of that semester, the class that had just built a ton of pots actually came out with much better end result and higher quality pots than the other person. Because when you just start iterating, that's where the real learnings come from. So repetitive work at 50% of the average work week is repetitive, annoying tasks. And 94% of businesses are just slowed down by repetitive tasks. So this is where automation is important. But getting into the actual tools and besides all the other things, it can be more than just Google search. So we all know Claude and ChatGPT. They kind of have their specific domains, right? Claude is better at documentation, autonomous work, artifacts, connectors, things like that. While ChatGPT is just a general good research, good writing. And there's things like apps, projects, and GPTs that are going to be very specific. So while they have their different strengths and weaknesses, I think it's important to understand that there's just more buttons than you think there are. So getting in a little bit of of a practical example, I'm going to be showing ChatGPT. Claude here also has a very similar feature, but ChatGPT projects are just a great way to start from I have just a simple chat to I have organized files and more organization and logical structure around the types of things. Right? So if you're just using ChatGPT as a chat window, I would recommend to start changing to more organized file structures. Right? When you first come into a big marketing or a finance department, if all the files are just scattered all over the place, you would say, let's clean up, let's get a file directory. So the same thing with ChatGPT, right? In projects, you can give it different sources, you can give it different grounding things that take ChatGPT from a generic answer bot to, based on these documents and this work, please answer these questions. So here I'm talking about event automation. I've given them a template image. I've given some requirement in text that then go through every other prompt, right? So we're starting from the overview, but going to specifics in these iterations. So the better the context is going to be, the better these chat responses. So here was a big, long, it gave clarifying questions, and that was part of the prompt was, hey, I have these event requirements, but I didn't give you all the things that I said I required. So as I go through iterations, it gets more and more specific. And this really helps you start to go from, oh, it's kind of a bad chatbot, it's just giving me random Google answers, or it's giving me fake data, but it gives you actual hooks into your documents. And then here, I'm using the Canva app. So in ChatGPT, there's apps. And this is where you start going from, I have a chatbot and I close it when I'm done answering the question, to it's actually giving me things. So these are generated images in Canva because I have a Canva connector set up. And I recommend looking into GPTs and apps because both of those are going to be just really helpful in going from I'm just using AI to actually I'm producing things with AI. Now, the next step of AI is actually the word agentic, and I'm sure you've heard it a bunch on LinkedIn. Sure you've heard it a bunch on all the different things of what's next in AI, but actually the barrier is pretty low right now. Things like Copilot Studio and Zapier are just general automation platforms that help you get to a level 1, right? AI has made automation both cheaper and easier for everyone to do. So ChatGPT, Claude are great one-stop shops for streamlining your workflow or finding edges where you can search and iterate. These kind of applications are going to be where you can start creating processes that allow you to build out repeatable things that can scale at your personal level. So I am going to start with a little story. So in event management, I run the .NET user group, and every month I have to do a couple things. And I'm a developer, not a designer or a graphic artist, or I don't like social media. I'm not like big on that. But there's just a bunch of things that I have to do managerially every time for the event. I have to plan it. I have to set up the graphics. I have to schedule a YouTube live stream, create event pages. Then I have to set up social media posts people actually attend. And I don't do a great job. I just do the same thing over and over again, same template. But could AI do that better? So this is a thing every month that I do that I don't like doing, and I'm not an expert. They're not hard things, but they are things that can be optimized with AI. So let's reimagine this with AI. I prompt it, an iterative process in the chat window, and then the final most important part is I review the AI outputs, right? These are social media posts going out to people. I don't want it to misrepresent my event or just look like AI slop, so that review is really important. So once I give the AI the overview, it generates the graphics, live stream, writes engaging descriptions, and then I review it so it sounds like and this allows the content to be repurposed really easily. I'm just going to give you a little brief demo of what this actually looks like in practice. So here you have a chat window, and I just said, hey, I have an event coming up in June. I have an idea. It's about Inspire. Let's schedule the YouTube live stream and get graphics for me. And it gave a bad thing. Hey, you didn't give me a title. You didn't give me a date and time. You didn't give me a location because it says in the system prompts, hey, these are the things you need. Just like I was showing in the ChatGPT project, Copilot Studio allows you to set parameters in instructions and say, these are the things you're looking for. So in an iterative process, I start giving these more details. I go from overview to specifics. And it's a natural ASIC and chat-based flow. Copilot Studio is really nice because you can do this from Teams. I could be talking through this through my phone. I'm showcasing this in Copilot Studio just to show the different outputs. And in this case, there's actually an error. So my graphic generation didn't work. But didn't just give me a 404. It explained in natural language, hey, you can't do this right now. There was a problem with the Gemini API. So it said, okay, I have another option. Here's a fallback. Why don't you use Canva? Canva is a generative AI. And then it rolls through and gives me, okay, here's your graphic. Here's your LinkedIn post draft. Does that all look good to you? And of course, I'm going to say, hey, let's actually change this a little bit. It's not really a hybrid event. I want people to be in person and focus on that. So, and remove emojis. AI loves its emojis. So that's just a brief look. And here's the outputs, right? It generated a YouTube live stream. It generated an event page. And it has a LinkedIn post for me. So it takes something that I don't like doing and just allows it to be an async chat-based process that I can then iterate on. And with Copilot Studio, actually work on making it better. Now, pulling back the curtain a little bit, this agent is very rich. This is further than just, hey, do this one thing for me. It actually has a lot of instructions as I scroll through, but the most important part is actually this purpose. Agents should be built with purpose because when you have a singular purpose, it allows it to not follow context. And AI has the idea of context and all these other things that are more technical, but really it's just saying if you have a single purpose, it can be more direct about iterating on that purpose. And here I'm showcasing some of the tools that actually power this. And Copilot Studio is connected to Zapier in this case. But once you get into this automation, there's just so many things that open up about automation that you could just start going down the path. And if you're stuck, ask AI. They're all built with these things. I have the ability to ask AI, hey, I'm not sure. I'm kind of stuck on this automation. What's next? So the one task that you have is name the annoying task and ask AI to map ways to automate it, right? I'm a blank. Every blank, I have to do this thing that I don't want to do, and it involves these steps. And those steps can be super basic or super in-depth if you already know the process. And then I want to automate this. And that's really where you start to see time savings. And an important part of this whole process is to measure before and after, because that is where you can start to see, hey, this is actually making a measurable impact, not only in my happiness, because I don't have to do this anymore, but also in time. Here's some of my sources for some of the facts I cited, and we're going to go to questions.
Hey, great information, Dan. Hey, we have a question out here from AI is Hard 412, long-time watcher, first-time commenter. My answers from ChatGPT are really generic and not very helpful. What am I doing wrong?
So I think there's two major things that really go wrong with ChatGPT specifically. One, it is designed to be a generic answer bot for everyone, right? So if you don't give it the context and you just drop a question onto it, it's just going to give you a generic answer. It can only feed back what you give in. So context is the first thing. And then second, if you have long-running things that you want answers and to iterate and work on and actually go beyond just a chatbot, the projects are where you're going to be starting to get those gains.
Fantastic. And I think kind of going off that, like, how do I actually validate the data that's coming out of AI? Because I've heard that it can hallucinate and all that kind of stuff. Like, what do I do to either help it give better answers, or when I do get an answer, to have some confidence that that's a good answer?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's one that everyone's facing right now is how do you deal with AI outputs, whether that's a lot of text that you have to review yourself or even the facts that it's citing. So two things that I recommend. So there's the factual things of like, I have this statistic. I have in all of my system prompts of, I personalize ChatGPT, I say, if you're going to bring up a fact, you have to cite it. And that forces it to give me a link, and then I review the link, right? Especially with things like statistics, there could be a million different things that it hallucinates on along that process. So that's kind of the statistical stuff. And then the second is like baseless claims. I think one thing that we talk a lot about as engineers is you should know the system better than the AI does, right? So in the realm of marketing or other things, you should be coming at it from a domain expert. So that's why I think we should start personal, because you know your job, right? You've been doing it for however many years you've been doing your job. That's where the next level of AI enabled comes from is I'm a domain expert empowering these bots to know what I know and just automate it.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it. Great stuff. Hey, for our next presenter, we're going to do AI in your department, which really is talking about how do I break this down at a level that is not just maybe myself in general, but if I'm working inside of, let's say, a marketing or a sales or a product department, how can I use AI really specifically? And we have our marketing guru, Rob McFarland, here to give us some insight into that. Here you go, Rob.
Thanks, Grant. So I like to joke that marketing made first contact with an intelligent life form. And what I mean by that is AI created the most value in marketing right out the gate. And when I first sat down and started playing with ChatGPT, I knew that my job had changed forever. And that's proven to be true. It really has changed this whole scope of the job. And it's enabled one person to be able to do lots of different roles that had formerly been filled by a team of specialists. And the pressure really hit marketing, like I said, probably the first of the various departments of a business. And the pressure was to write faster, design more, analyze everything, and support more channels with fewer resources. That's been a trend in marketing for many years, and AI has really accelerated that. Role consolidation has been a thing, for over a decade. So initially, one of the first things that people used it for is just to help write emails, write web copy, etc. But it's advanced well beyond that now and has become an operating layer for how marketing work gets planned, created, reviewed, and shipped. So the first obvious value that it provided was image generation. That value was obvious. Marketing departments spend a lot of time, energy, and resources creating images which might not get a ton of business value. And historically, like I said, you'd need a graphic designer who has that specialty skills to get in there and do that work, all of which was very time consuming and challenging from a technical and a creative standpoint. Whereas formerly you'd be searching through stock images and or having to design things from whole cloth, you can now create custom imagery really easily. And as many of you know, when this first thing got started, the images, were pretty neat early on, but were pretty problematic. We'd throw extra hands in there. Text was a disaster. And so people kind of wrote it off as slop, but that has changed. The quality has improved exponentially. Every time a model gets released, the improvements are really, really impressive. What's changed with tools like Adobe Firefly and Nano Banana is you're able to get consistency across multiple posts. Earlier this year, Grant taught a class at Eastern Washington University about C#. And it really challenged him because AI has made development entirely different. And so he wanted to chronicle his first class of teaching C# in an AI era. And so he wrote a series of blog posts. And it was important that all of those posts looked like they were part of the same thing. And formerly, getting that same characters, same graphic styles, all of that was very challenging, but it's become much easier. And I'll just kind of buzz through this workflow in Adobe Firefly. So the first thing you do is select which model you want. In this case, it's Nano Banana. You select your aspect ratio of what you want. You can add context, images of what you want it to look like. And then, of course, you enter your detailed prompt of what you want the content to be and what you want it to look like. And right out the gates, it'll give you something that's pretty darn good. You can see here there's coherent writing. The characters are all have the appropriate number of digits. But what we just saw is I'm able to prompt it and say, I want Grant closer to the whiteboard, and it just does that. So that's pretty neat. But actually, the text generation solved a harder problem for us. And the example that I'll give you for that is writing case studies. Every time we wrap up a project here, we try to write a case study to help capture the work that we did so that we can share that with our clients and for proposals and just to have a record of the work that we've done. And that really exposed a bottleneck, which unfortunately was me. And the reason for that is, of course, the writing is challenging enough. But now add to that not speaking the language. So I don't have a educational background in computer science. So in starting to work here, I had a real steep learning curve of how to speak the language. And ChatGPT really helped me to cut through all of that jargon, all of these technical terms, so that I could understand it on my time and not have to constantly badger developers for further insights of what they're talking about, all of that. So just on that level, it created a ton of value. But also, it helped speed up the process considerably. What was formerly a lot of me interviewing developers, asking clarifying questions, drafting, revisions, all of it became much easier with ChatGPT and AI tools. However, those tools still made it largely a manual process. I was still copy-pasting from questionnaires. I was still just, kind of having to go through this process, one step after another. I'd gather the context, I'd ask follow-up questions, I'd structure the story, I'd generate all the assets, and then I'd publish the thing. What I recognized in having done that a whole bunch of times is this was a repeatable process. I did the same things virtually every time. And what that told me is this was an opportunity to create an agent-driven workflow. And so for the next step of this thing, the goal was to capture all the expertise that the developers have, not just ultimately the output. So we built what we call the case study interviewer agent. We built it in Copilot Studio, which Dan talked a little bit about earlier, and it's delivered through Teams. The agent turns developer interviews into case study drafts. Essentially what happens is the agent's able to capture all the project context, the client challenges, the technical approach that we took to solving their challenges, the business outcome, and then it continues to ask questions of the developer until it's satisfied that it has all of the pertinent details to be able to generate the case study. From there, it then generates the case study. It also creates one-sheet copy, social media posts, image prompts, and other content. So this is the workflow, basically, from the project closing to publishing it in the various channels. So the process gets started when a project closes in Intellitek's proprietary professional service automation platform called Storming the Castle. When that project moves to close status, the project manager gets a notification through Teams that they need to assign the case study to the lead developer. The developer then gets a message in Teams, which begins the interview. The agent then asks a series of questions to extract those details. Like I said, it's smart. It can ask, those clarifying questions and really get at the details and ensure that, we capture all of the work and value that we provided. The agent then creates those draft assets. It writes to a Word template. The agent knows exactly how we like to write, how we like to format things. And then out of that, there's a human-in-the-loop editorial process. So obviously, I review all of the contents that been generated. I go back and forth in an editorial process with the developer. Once we decide ultimately that it's good to go, we then call on another agent, which Dan talked about earlier, to create all of the content and ultimately publish and distribute it. How am I doing on time? Okay. So we're looking at a whole ecosystem of agents from that will basically carry out all the work of the marketing department. You can see on this slide in the left column all of the ones that we're looking at building, and in the right column are the platforms and tools that we connect with those agents. And we also created something called our Marketing Manifest agent, which basically is the single source of truth for all of our agents in our ecosystem. And it's important because agents need that shared context so that they're working from the same strategic foundation. The agent is built based on the principles of Karapathy's LLM wiki, which is basically a way of structuring all of the information so that the agents can easily read it and understand it. You can see the index for the sections of the manifest, and all of the sections are, like I said, written in such a way that the agents know exactly what to do.
Thanks all, Rob. Great stuff. And I just wanted to ask a couple of questions at the end. It seems like you've done a great job of kind of automating a lot of these different pieces. Are you concerned about your job?
Great question. So initially, I definitely was concerned. Like I said, I knew immediately my job had changed, and I think, all of us, when we experience that change, can get a little bit of an uneasy feeling. But anecdotally, what's happened here at Intellitetect is all of this AI work that we've done has actually created new opportunities. And so we're actually expanding and creating new jobs for people to come in and help with our marketing efforts for Intellitetect and the various products that we're marketing.
So one final question. We heard the term kind of AI slop, and you talked about, hey, this process and AI is generating some stuff, but how do we help it not just to be that AI slop that has lots of EM dashes and a lot of emojis and extra words that just seem like they're just kind of filling space?
Sure.
What are some tips that we can use to make this really sound good, and not only into the LLM, but maybe some processes afterwards?
Sure. So the Marketing Manifest, I think, is really essential to help you get the output that you'd like, to give it some more parameters, to let it know that, for example, you don't want it to write with M dashes. And that helps control the output a little bit, but it's also really important that a human remains in the loop. There's always got to be a person that's evaluating, making sure that everything is representing the business how you want it to. And then lastly, as I like to say, the thing that as a marketing person that you're getting paid for, especially now where it's less about clicking buttons and using tools, is taste. And so ultimately it's up to you to make that sort of taste decision about whether this constitutes something that people would think is slop, or if it's something that they would recognize as valuable.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. All right. For our next talk, we're going to have Elizabeth Pauley joining us, who is heading up and leading one of our teams that does AI in one of our products, a product called Case Amplify, and really looking at how do we talk about using AI on our software, in this case, like we're using AI to actually build the software, but we also use AI in our software, and that's really what we want to talk about. And Elizabeth's going to give us a rundown of, hey, how can you think about using AI kind of embedded in the applications you already have? So, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Grant. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of how we are using an app called Case Amplify to transform the workflows within a particular line of work, although I think its applications are pretty applicable to other areas as well, as I think you'll be able to see once I dive into the features a little bit. But to start off, before I get to the features, I wanted to just give a little bit of background on what Case Amplify is. So Case Amplify is an AI-powered case management tool that we are designing to allow caseworkers in a variety of human services to focus less on the administrative work that's a part of their job and focus more on the people that they're trying to serve. So casework is a pretty broad term, but I'm mostly speaking to casework within human services, and one of our primary focuses is vocational rehabilitation. So this is caseworkers who are helping people with disabilities to find, prepare for, and maintain employment. And within this line of work, each person is typically working with a pretty high caseload. I've heard numbers as high as over 100 clients per caseworker, and that's a lot of people to work with. And on top of that, for each client that they're working with, typically comes a lot of data entry, a lot of paperwork that they have to complete behind the scenes, both because as a caseworker, you need detailed records to reference as you try to figure out what services would be best for that person, but also because program funding is often tied to extensive reporting requirements. So making sure that the data that's being collected is both accurate and up to date is really important so that these caseworkers can keep doing the work that they're doing. So now to get into a little bit of what Case Amplify does. As I mentioned, one of the biggest pain points is data collection and entry. So one of our biggest features in Case Amplify is automated data capture. So from the first moment that a new client walks into the office seeking services, they typically start out by filling out some intake forms. They might provide some identifying documentation to the receptionist so that their case can be created and some basic information can be entered before that person meets with their caseworker for their intake conversation. And rather than this person filling out the forms and then handing those to the receptionist who then has to enter that same data into the system, they can instead just take some pictures of those documents. Oops. Sorry about that. Let me go back. They can take pictures of those documents and upload them straight into Case Amplify, and Case Amplify will analyze those documents and input that data into a case record automatically. We also support data collection in this way through conversations. So as soon as that client walks in and meets with their caseworkers for the first time, rather than the caseworker sitting and asking questions, taking notes, maybe filling out some paperwork as they go, they can just sit there and focus on engaging with the person in front of them and know that the system is in the background listening to the conversation and collecting the data that they need. And what's really great about this is the data that we're collecting, both from conversations and documents, is stored on the case in a way that it can flow right into the forms that need to be filled out afterwards. So all of that data collection and entry is automated so that the caseworkers can just focus on the people and figuring out how to best help those people. Right, now I'll go to the next slide. Awesome. So in addition to collecting data automatically from conversations, we also have this concept of guided conversations. So there are a lot of organizations that have pretty standardized interview flows. They have very specific questions they want to ask to collect very specific pieces of data. And rather than having this paper in front of them, or maybe they pull it up on their computer, the script that they're following, we have created a really nice guided interview experience within Case Amplify, where as you're having this conversation, it will display the questions that you need to ask, and AI is analyzing the conversation as you go to mark things as complete, or even mark things as missed too, and say, hey, you might want to revisit this topic. We're not sure if you collected enough information for this specific question. And this is nice both for organizations as a whole to make sure that caseworkers across the board are following the standards that they've set in place, but it's also really helpful for newer caseworkers who might still be getting a feel for things. They might be worried about asking all the right questions and making sure they're collecting all the right information, but they can worry about that a little less because Case Amplify supports them through that whole process. So obviously, people are using Case Amplify to collect a lot of data. And what we've also done is added some different AI tools throughout the system to make that data more digestible so that caseworkers can spend less time reviewing the data and more time focusing on the results and making decisions based off of that data. So the first tool that we've added in for that is Kara, which is an AI assistant that each caseworker gets, and it has the ability to review all the same information that the caseworker can see in the system and quickly provide recommendations on top priorities, next steps for specific cases, so that caseworkers don't have to sift through all of that information themselves. Kara can kind of help you with that. And Kara does more than just review the information. She can also do things in the system on behalf of the caseworker. So sending messages out to clients, updating data on cases. Kara can do all of that just by you sending a message. In addition to that, we also use AI summaries a lot to surface just the most important updates and information that a caseworker needs to know, so that they can get right to acting on that information. So we have a case summary here that is updated every single time a case is updated, whether that means a text message was sent, a new conversation was had, whatever that may be. This is always the most up-to-date you could possibly be. And in addition to that, we provide this priority level. So we have stable, sensitive, and urgent priority levels that just indicate, how quickly you should be acting on this case. And what's really nice is this isn't just displayed on the cases page, but when a caseworker first signs into Case Amplify, those priorities will be sifted to the top, so you have your urgent cases right at the top, and you know what you should be addressing first when you start your day. Just a couple more features that Case Amplify offers. We also have workflows, which are really easy to create. We have this nice chat experience where you can basically just tell AI what you want this workflow to do. In this example, say the caseworker says, hey, every time I assign a task to my client, I want to send weekly reminders that this task needs to be completed. And if it has a deadline and we're getting close to that deadline and it hasn't been completed, I would like to know about that. So once that workflow is triggered to start for a case, it will just run in the background sending those reminders for you, and it will only come to the caseworker when it runs into a problem or when that outcome, the task being completed or not, occurs. So say the workflow has tried sending a message to the same person 3 times and they haven't responded, it might be time for the caseworker to step in and do something more. So the workflow will let that caseworker know, but until that point, the caseworker doesn't have to pay attention to it, doesn't have to worry about what it's doing until an issue arises. And then lastly, we have this reporting feature, which is very similar to workflows. You just send a message saying what data you would like, and the system will query that data for you and generate a report. This is really nice both for administrators who are wanting to create reports to analyze performance and make sure that caseworkers are doing their job well, but also for creating those reports that are needed for compliance and for funding, like I mentioned earlier. And all you have to do is send a message. You don't need any technical skills for this. Awesome. So that's just kind of a brief overview of some of the AI features that we use in Case Amplify. And there were just a couple of takeaways that I wanted to highlight from those features that we've built. Using AI in Case Amplify allows caseworkers to deliver higher quality service to even higher numbers of people, both in the sense that seasoned caseworkers in the field can work through data and tasks more quickly, but also because those that are newer to the job have a lot of support built into the system that allows them to learn those processes a lot faster. And in addition to that, while I used case management as the example in Case Amplify, the app itself is very customizable, so we're also exploring ways that this app can be used in areas outside of case management, because the truth is things like note-taking and data collection, paperwork, and reporting, those are tasks that are not just part of a caseworker's job. I do a lot of those things in my daily work, and they show up in all sorts of jobs and are great examples of things that can be automated and improved on using AI in both case management and beyond. And finally, the goal of using AI in the system is not to replace the role that the human plays. it's a role that is still very much needed. The idea is just that AI can help to automate some of the more repetitive tasks that allow people to focus on what matters most, which is building those strong relationships and using their depth of knowledge and experience to discern how they can best help the people that they serve. And I think we're on to questions now.
Oh, Elizabeth, thank you. Some great stuff. Hey, back a couple of slides ago, you mentioned the fact that when you put in, you can just ask for a report. Now, a lot of times AI is not great at doing math and like giving back results. How do you make sure that the results are like accurate, like the numbers actually add up?
Yes, that's a great question. There are a couple of ways that we handle that in Case Amplify. One, it's not AI isn't taking numbers and just doing things with it on its own. Underneath, there's a lot of code that's happening, and it's limited to a very specific set of operations that it can carry through that are based on actual mathematical things happening.
Gotcha. So it's actually not just AI just getting all your data and doing the thing. Yes. It's actually doing some other work underneath to get the data and pull it in. And actually, there's other code that analyzes it, not just AI. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. So kind of a follow-on question a little bit. You're dealing with a whole bunch of sensitive data. Somebody could talk about a medical condition, something like that, getting us into HIPAA. They could give a social security number, getting into some other concerns. What are the concerns about using AI with some of this sensitive information?
Yeah, that's a really common question that we get from anyone who's starting to use Case Amplify. I guess first off, we've done a lot of work to be both HIPAA and SOC 2 certified, but we take privacy of data really seriously. So within the app itself, although we're using AI all over the place, we make sure that all of the models we're using, any data that's sent to it is not actually used as training data, so it stays safe within the system. And if people still have concerns about it, we have a lot of controls within there where you can say, hey, this is a piece of information I don't even want sent to AI, period. And you have a lot of control over that, so it only sees what you are okay with it seeing.
Got it. So having those business agreements in place is important.
Yeah.
And that's why using some of the bigger providers and making sure you're paying for them and things like that and really doing your research makes a lot of sense. So last question. Now, with the stuff that Rob was doing, great stuff, but hey, if you get a marketing thing and maybe this sentence doesn't make sense or it gets something wrong, it's a big deal, but it's not somebody's life, right? I mean, here you're talking about how do you, it feels like the stakes are a little bit higher with respect to, we're recommending things for what people can do with their lives, and next steps they could take to get through rehab, whatever those things are.
Yeah.
How do you kind of deal with that? What's the kind of key to making that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of work that we've put into that as well. So as far as making sure that data is accurate, I think Dan might have touched on this and some of the people earlier in this, but anything that AI does, humans in the system have a way to review where that information came from. So if we're collecting information from a conversation, those people will be able to review the transcript and see exactly where that data was pulled from so that they can validate that it's correct. And we also have kind of this idea that anything that AI can do in the system, a person can undo or has to approve if they can't undo it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we have a lot of controls built into there, to account for that too.
Hey, fantastic. Hey, thanks, Elizabeth. I really appreciate it. That's some great information.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, last up, we have just a really quick thing talking about some AI next steps with Wendy Corbin. If you don't have your phone out, please get your phone out because she's going to have a QR code for you to scan here in just a second.
Before we close up, I just wanted to briefly talk about one last use case of AI. So as Dan mentioned, the best thing to focus on is to identify a process that you do not like to do. So that's what I did. I said, what in business development do I dislike the most? And I think it was pretty obvious it was contract writing. So what I did is we implemented AI workflow to be able to help me generate contracts by pulling data out of meeting transcriptions, prompting my teammates for more details, pulling cost data out of an Excel document, and a process that used to take me 2 to 3 hours is now down to 30 minutes. But most importantly, I now spend 30 minutes doing something I dislike, so that is a big win for me. So, Anyway, I just wanted to share one last use case from business development. We really thank you all for your time, and we would love for you to capture the QR code and provide us some feedback. Your feedback is really critical to us so we can continue to improve on our sessions and continue to collect the information that you want to hear about. And we can collate all of the topics that you're interested in hearing about, and that we can match up your interests with our content. So please take a minute to take your phone out and provide some feedback. So at Intelitect, we provide a range of services around AI. First of all, we help organizations identify and define their AI strategy by doing readiness assessments, as well as defining proof of concept use cases, as Dan and Rob and Elizabeth have discussed. We also use AI to develop our solutions, and we help integrate AI into enterprise ecosystems. At Intelitect, we have been building a data infrastructure for a long time, and we now define and architect our data infrastructure to be able to support AI implementations. And lastly, we provide services around AI enablement, including coaching and training from executives all the way through to developers. So we want to thank you for your time and your attention. We really appreciate that you joined us. And we also offer a free 1-hour AI consultation where we can help you determine where you are within your AI journey and what are the most pragmatic steps for you to focus on next to be able to accelerate your AI adoption. So please, if you're interested in taking advantage of that, please contact me at wendy@intelitect.com. And again, thank you so much for your time, and everybody have a wonderful day.